Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint Great Basin National Park, complete with this Bristlecone pine tree. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's tutorial, I'll be using Sap Green, Prussian Blue, VanDyke Brown, Burnt Umber, Yellow Ochre, and Payne's Gray by Winsor & Newton. I'll also use a little bit of white gouache, and I have a paper here that's taped down to a size 5 by 7 inches. And for my brushes, I'll be using a size 2, 6, and 16 round Princeton brush. To get started with the painting, I want to do a really light wash for our sky using our size 16 brush. And I'm going to go ahead and do a nice wash, just using my brush left to right. And this way I'll get a nice even layer of water, and it only needs to go about halfway, just a little over halfway actually, for the page. And keep in mind, here we're going to have our Bristol pine tree. To the right, we're going to have a mountain range, so we don't want to go heavy with the Prussian blue. We just want a few highlights of the Prussian blue. And again, our tree and our mountains will be here, except they are going to be more potent in color, so they will be able to paint over some parts of the sky. So I'm just going to start by adding a little bit of Prussian blue in this left area. And I'm just kind of gently blotting it irregularly to get kind of an imitation of clouds with the white negative space. I'm going to add a little bit over here towards the left. And I'll add just a little towards the right as well. Just doing these really organic loose shapes. I'm going to add just a little bit more off towards the left, because I know my tree won't be covering this spot here. Just going to add a little bit more. And then just a hint of some in this cloud here as well, just a little bit. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and allow the sky here to just set and dry, and when we come back we will move on to the next steps. All right, next up I want to do a little sketch of our Bristlecone pine tree, and I'm going to use some watered down burnt umber for the sketch and my size 2 brush. So I'm just going to take my light burnt umber, and I'm going to place the Bristol pine starting around in this area, so just leaving about 1.5 inch gap from the left corner. And the base of the Bristol pine is going to be about 1 inch thick here. And towards the right, it's going to kind of fan outward, just like so, like a subtle curve. And then towards the left, it kind of skirts over towards the left corner slightly. And from here, I'm just going to do a little divot, like a couple little C curves off towards the left. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a curve towards the right. And then I'm just going to continue up and do a curve towards the left this time. The Bristol pines are very whimsical, lots of curved trunks and branches. Next, I'm going to do kind of just a horizontal curved branch here, just like that. And then it's going to kind of fan off towards the edge of the page, just right over towards the left. Then I'm just going to sketch out the top part of this branch, just like that. It's slightly thick, not too thick. And then from here, I want to sketch out one of our taller branches. So I'm just gonna do an elongated curved line here and then let it angle upward. And then this time a little bit more vertically upward. So we've got an angled line that's pointing towards the right corner and then a vertical curved line. And then from here, this branch is gonna kind of start midway in the tree and then just curve slightly up, kind of just doing a parallel line slightly. And then from here, there's a couple more smaller branches. So I'm just doing a curved line. And there's going to be another tiny branch off of there. And a second branch off towards the right with kind of like a Y shape curve. And then in the center here, there is another nice branch, and this one's kind of thick. So I'm going to start this one off towards the left. It's got a nice base here. And then from there, I'm just going to do a curved, like backward C shape. Or it's not a backward C shape, it's a normal C shape, but just a subtle C curve there. And then up towards the top, I'm going to have a couple Y branches. And again, this is a super loose sketch. We will add more detail later on. And from here, I'm just going to connect this to this branch. There's going to be another skinny branch off towards the left. Again, just a slight curve shape. And then I'm going to do a second curve shape just like that. Kind of angle this branch a little upward. There's going to be another small, tiny branch off towards the right here. And then just over here, we're going to have kind of a chunkier, but still kind of small branch. Just like that. And then I'm going to do a smaller branch off towards the left here. Slightly overlapping. And on this branch, I'm going to add just a few curved branches. There's going to be one off here, kind of just angled slightly down. I'm going to do a couple here. And then one off, kind of pointed slightly upward. Maybe one just below that. All right, and then over towards the left here, we're going to have a large branch that's got a slight curve, just like so. And towards the top, I'm just going to thin it out just a little bit so it's nice and elongated. And then I'm just going to leave a little bit of a gap to paint a parallel line, just like so. And off towards the side, I'm going to add a couple small branches. have just a couple more branch details that are kind of underlapped behind here. I'm going to start with, and it's okay if these overlap the branches a little bit. I'm going to start with a curved line, just like so, kind of tucking it into the branch in front of it. And then I'm just going to thicken up this branch, just doing a parallel curved line as we've been doing. And then up here is going to be another little branch connected to it, pointed upward. And then another small branch, and maybe a smaller branch there. Okay, and then lastly, there's just going to be a tiny little branch kind of connected to the base, just like so. And I think looking at this, I just want to elongate the top here just a bit taller. Okay. And then I'm just going to add maybe one more little small branch on the inside there. And then lastly, there are a couple more branches on more of the lower part of the trunk. I'm just going to do a curved branch just like so, and a second one kind of intertwined with it. And then lastly, just a curved one, kind of angled off towards the left. And that is the sketch of our Bristlecone pine. The last part of sketching I'm going to do is I'm going to water down some Payne's Gray for my sketch color, continuing on with my size 2 brush. And I want to paint the silhouette of our mountain. It's going to be tucked in a little bit starting here, and then I'm going to slowly just angle it upward. And then once we get to this point, we have kind of a subtle peak here that has a curved upward line that continues up, then kind of goes down and then back up again. And then it slowly slopes downward. And then off towards the right, we have a second peak that's going to be slightly cut off, just like that. It's just a couple little hills, little curves. And then down below, I'm going to have some rocks, and I'm going to paint first one at the base of our tree, and then a second one just right next to it, slightly elongated. And then another one kind of overlapped or underlapped behind that one. Maybe a pointed one. And then a more jagged rock. And then a small one off towards the right. And again, I'm doing the sketch with watercolor because if you use pencil, unfortunately, it will show through the transparency of the watercolor as we start to paint. Next up, I want to do some washes just for some base colors to a certain area. So I want to start with sap green, and I'm just going to apply a wash of sap green just to kind of mark off our green area here. It'll slightly overlap on the tree trunk just a bit. So I'm just using some really simple loose texture and painting around the rock here. And then I'm just going to bring it up, almost all the way up to the sketch line. I'll leave a little bit of that sketch open. I'm adding just a little bit of concentrated pigment and texture right over here towards this edge of the tree. And then just a little bit more texture. While it's wet, I'm gonna take a little bit of Payne's Gray, and I just wanna apply just a couple little blots of it in this left corner just to give a little bit of shading. And Payne's Gray is quite dark and pigmented. I'm just allowing myself just to get a little bit more contrast and detail by applying this dark color. Okay, I'll just let that kind of sit and hang out. And while it's doing that, I want to switch gears and grab my larger brush. And I just want to get a really like subtle shade of kind of like a grayish, I don't know if that's a word, gray beige. So I'm gonna just say it is a grayish color. There we go. I think that's fine. So I'm gonna mix up some Payne's Gray with some burnt umber. And this is just going to allow this kind of gray tone to be a little bit more earthy by having the Payne's Gray in there. And then I'm also going to add a tiny bit of black. Okay, so I'm going to, well, I just applied some color here, and that's okay to tweak it as it's happening, but I'm going to add a little bit more brown to that color. Just a little bit to that mixed color. And I'm gonna just apply a wash of it. There we go. That's more of the shade I'm hoping for. And I simply am just going to allow it to saturate and be a base coat color for our mountains. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a sketch over the blue border of our rocks down below. And I'm gonna go ahead and use this color to paint over the blue sketch of the mountain as well. And I'm just gonna carefully paint around this branch over here towards the left. And then around the tree trunk as well. And next, I'm just gonna allow this area here where the mountain will kind of peek behind. I'm just gonna allow that to hang real quick. We'll add some more of the mountain color when we come back, once the green is nice and dry, so that way the two colors don't mesh together. And then next up, I am going to add a little bit more of a darker mountain color to this area here. So I'm going to mix a little bit more black and a bit more blue. And while it's still slightly wet, I'm just going to apply a little bit of this darker color using my large brush. All right, and before I do anything else, I'm going to get a little bit more water on my brush and just kind of buff it out, the contrast of color. Okay, and then while this area is still slightly damp, I'm going to take my brush and mix some sap green and a little bit of Prussian blue to make kind of a cooler toned green. And I'm just gonna do a really loose imitation of some trees down below here. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna just switch gears to my size 6 brush for a moment, and I'm going to basically paint a little bit of green, this green that we just mixed, and I am gonna just paint along the border, and I'm gonna stop at this point here, and from here I'm just going to add a little bit of greenery, and I'm just gonna add it really loosely. So I'm just kind of zigzagging almost my brush up and down in a vertical motion very irregularly. Some trees are gonna be taller than others. And again, this is just super loose, not meant to be super, hyper focused on. And the main focal point is this Bristlecone pine tree, so I don't want any other details to kind of take away from that. So I'm just doing a few simple trees in here. Just gonna kind of lift some of the pigment here. All right, and then just along here, I'm going to sketch a little line because we're going to have some white gouache in here that's going to be a little hint of snow. So this is like just the end of winter season here, just that transition between winter and spring. So I'm just going to sketch that line and add a little bit of loose green texture for some foliage that's kind of popping through, showing the start of spring. Okay, so from here, I am just gonna allow the greenery here just to finish drying. It's taking its time, and the greenery here as well. And when we come back, we'll work on our tree. Then we'll move on to our rocks and a few highlights of some pops of snow. Okay, so now I'm going to use my size 6 brush to mix up some burnt umber with some yellow ochre. So just to kind of deepen the yellow ochre a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of water to this blend. And I'm just gonna start painting this color as our base color of our Bristlecone pine tree here. So this is just gonna be kind of what's visible just underneath all of our details and layers that we'll be adding, but I'm gonna go ahead and just paint over the branches and the rest of the trunk using this color. Next, I'm just going to mix up some of that same color combination, and I'm gonna add in some VanDyke Brown as well, just to give it a little bit more depth. So a combination of yellow ochre, some burnt umber, and some VanDyke Brown, and then I'm gonna also add a touch of Payne's Gray just to take some of that warmth away, just to kind of tone it down a little bit and get a little bit more of a neutral tone of the brown. Okay, so now what I want to do is start to add our shading. So I'm gonna just add a little bit of this darker color towards the left along the ridge line of our greenery. And then I'm going to carry that on just down below here, and then add a little bit of it towards the right. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of water just next to that, just to kind of buff out that transition of that outline a little bit. And then I'm just going to gradually just kind of take my brush and allow that color to kind of blend and mesh a little bit more. And next, I'm just gonna add a few little streaks with this mixed color. And I'm doing this subtle kind of like S-curve shape here. Our tree has a lot of really unique curves to the bark and the formation of the trunk. So I'm just kind of mimicking that with this S-curve. And then from here, I'm gonna just take a little bit more Payne's Gray and apply some of that into some of these curves here, just to accentuate them a little bit more. I'm gonna add a couple more in here as well towards the left. Okay, and now I want to take a little bit of burnt umber, just plain burnt umber, and I'm just gonna do a swooping motion that connects to this branch towards the right. And then from there, I'm gonna take a little bit of water and just blend that downward slightly. And then I'm gonna take some burnt umber and outline the bottom of these two branches that are kind of weaving through. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of texture going in that direction as well, just using the burnt umber for now. Okay, and then from here, I want to use our mixed color that had the burnt umber, yellow ochre, and Payne's gray, and VanDyke Brown. So almost all the colors, but the green and the Prussian blue, pretty much. So these 4 colors here. I'm just gonna go ahead and make a little bit more of that color and add some more shading over here towards the left. So I'm just gonna take my brush and just apply it on that bottom edge of that branch, kind of swoop it downward, just like so. And then I'm gonna use some of it to outline the bottom of this little branch towards the right, towards the left, sorry. Just like that. And then from here, I'm going to take my brush and add some shading on the left and the right side of this other branch here. Just to give it some more dimension. And I'm gonna take a little bit of Payne's gray real quick, just to apply on the left edge of this first branch that we did before this one, just to add a little bit more depth. And then as this one has kind of dried down below, towards the trunk, I just wanna apply just a couple streaks just to reiterate some of that trunk details. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go towards the left side of each little branch here and just add a little outline to just give some shading and detail all throughout. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of burnt umber and add a few C-curve shapes and strokes along this branch. And then I'm just going to gently outline the bottom as well. And then the bottom of this little branch here, just kind of carrying on that theme throughout, because our light source is coming from the right. So the right side of the Bristlecone pine tree will be more highlighted. So I'm going to go throughout the rest of the tree and add some shading with that mixed color combination of these last 4 colors here. And I'm gonna add the shading towards the left side of each branch. And when we come back, I will just add some finishing touches that I'll demo. And on this last area, we have some curvatures in the branch here. And so I'm just gonna do kind of a S-shaped subtle curve using the same shading color. Just a very simple, subtle curvature on this part of the branch. And then I'll just kind of add a little bit more of an outline over here. And that is our Bristlecone pine tree. Moving on to this next part, I want to, first of all, fill in this area that I missed. Just to add a little bit of a completion here to our mountain. Add a little bit of gray in these white areas too, as a continuation. And from here, I just want to paint using some Payne's Gray mixed with our VanDyke Brown. I just want to add a little bit of color to our rocks. So I'm just gonna do a wash of that color, using plenty of water. And then from here, I'm gonna take just some plain VanDyke Brown, and on the left side of each rock, I'm just gonna add a touch of the VanDyke Brown, just to give some more depth and shading. I'm just kind of dragging it downward slightly. And then last, I'm just gonna add a little bit of Payne's Gray as well. Just slightly layered on top of the VanDyke Brown. And then I'm just gonna lightly drag some of that color on the highlight shade as well, just to give some variegation and texture to the highlighted areas as well. Okay, and while that sets, I want to add a few touches of snow. So I am just going to take my size 6 brush and take directly from my gouache paint here and just add a few flecks of highlights of the white snow over above the rocks here. Just like that. And then I want to add just a few bits of snow, just some really loose brushwork here on our mountain. Not overthinking it too much, just some organic rough edges here. And then I'm going to add just a few flecks of white. on the left side here as well. Maybe just a few up top. And I'm just going in and kind of layering, touching up some of the white paint just to make sure it's opaque enough and kind of popping over what I'm painting in front of. All right, and now I'll just do a few more little pops of snow down below. Again, the brushwork is so just loose and organic, so don't overthink that too much. I'm just kind of blotting my brush in these irregular, organic, loose shapes. Thank you so much for joining me for today's watercolor tutorial. I hope that you enjoy this one. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any further watercolor tutorials.